Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Review, a prime cut of classic Metroid flavor.
Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Review, Bed, Bath, Arm Cannon, and Beyond. These are fake.
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
Metroid Prime 4 Beyond arrives after a long 8-year wait, and the first thing it does is remind you exactly what kind of game it wants to be. Retro Studios has built a title almost defiantly faithful to the original trilogy, a game that stops just shy of holding up a sign that says, "Remember this?" But the confidence behind that choice is evident immediately. The pacing, the structure, the cadence of discovery, all of it feels like a reaffirmation of why this series mattered in the first place. Anyone expecting a dramatic reinvention may be surprised by how traditional the design is, but the execution makes a strong argument for why this formula still works today. Viros spans several distinct regions, each with its own visual identity and comfortable rhythm of scanning, shooting, and doubling back. First, Fury Green sets the tone with dense vegetation and tight corridors, while a snowy region uses reflective surfaces and slow-moving environmental hazards to keep your pace measured. The desert area then opens into long, straight arenas that feel explicitly designed for the motorcycle that you eventually acquire. All of these zones are shaped like classic Prime maps, linear on paper, but full of little loops and offshoots that reward players who pay attention. This is not a modern open world, and Retro does not pretend otherwise. Instead, the studio invests in atmosphere, texture, and strong silhouettes. On Switch 2, performance mode hits 120 frames per second, and quality mode holds a crisp 60 frames. Both run smoothly, which is not shocking given the controlled scope, but it does help the world feel remarkably cohesive. Combat in Prime 4 is, again, a direct line to an earlier era of first-person design. Enemies are tanky, projectiles travel at readably slow speeds, and the movement is all about deliberate repositioning rather than twitchy reflexes. A lock-on system remains the backbone of combat. And even with that optional mouse-style free aim mode, it is clear that Retro built encounters around spacing and timing rather than raw accuracy. This is a game where Samus still feels like a tank, with jet boosters strapped on, heavy and powerful, never floaty. The firefights have a chunky, deliberate tempo that stands in contrast to most modern shooters. It is a pace that may feel slow to newcomers, but series veterans will likely appreciate how confidently Retro sticks to its roots. Samus's new psychic abilities slot into the classic root loop seamlessly. The psychic glove allows her to pull motes from the environment, route energy through conduits, and yank obstacles off their hinges. The psychic visor overlays additional information onto the scan interface, creating a second layer of environmental cues that feel like a natural expansion of Prime's investigative tone. These tools enhance puzzle solving and traversal in ways that feel additive, but not disruptive. They're not system-shaking overhauls that some fans might have expected, but they're integrated well enough that by the end of the game, I could not imagine Samus without these powers. Now, what may surprise longtime fans is how much more story-forward Prime 4 is compared to earlier entries. Retro weaves in a surprising number of mid-mission cutscenes, dramatic close-ups, and character-driven beats that give Samus and the world around her emotional shading. These moments are brief and restrained. This is not Prime reinvented as a quip-heavy action game, as many might have been worried, but they add welcome clarity and propulsion to the narrative. Rather than relying solely on environmental inference, the game now punctuates key discoveries with short cinematic beats. A handful of Galactic Federation companions will show up throughout the story, and their presence is handled with a surprising amount of restraint. Miles, the early game standout, offers just enough context and emotional framing before gracefully stepping aside. Others appear briefly to deliver small bursts of personality. This is very much still Samus's adventure. The companions give the world human texture without disrupting the solitude and environmental storytelling that defined the earlier games. They're fine. They are here, they say their lines, add a bit of world flavor, and let Samus get back to what she's best at: brooding in the dark. Now, you're probably wondering about that motorcycle. And yes, most of the time you're using it will be to cross wide, mostly empty desert spaces filled with the occasional crashed probe, abandoned structure, or lonely scanning opportunity. It is a high-speed traversal mechanic and more of a way to keep these long stretches from feeling like loading screens. The sparse terrain feels intentional. These big and quiet spaces are dotted with just enough interactable objects to keep your visor active. We're not pretending that Prime has gone open world. It hasn't. It's just more of a gentle palette swap between these classic dungeons that the series is known for. But the motorcycle, though it might get a little boring around the midsection of the game, absolutely earns its keep in the finale. Without getting into spoilers, Retro suddenly builds an entire set piece around it, complete with sweeping camera pools and the kind of high-speed escalation you would expect from a fully cinematic action game. It is one of the boldest moments in Prime 4, and it gives the bike just enough payoff to make it feel purposeful. Now, the game's heightened storytelling finally crystallizes in the finale, where emotional stakes and mechanical spectacle rise in tandem. It is the closest that the series has come to an honest-to-God action movie, and it suggests a confident path forward if Retro wants to keep expanding the scope of the series' storytelling. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a confident, meticulously crafted return to the core principles of the series. Viros delivers varied but focused environments, the psychic abilities expand Samus's toolkit in elegant, practical ways, and the motorcycle is a weird idea that works. The third act will swing harder than any fan will expect. This is not a reinvention of a franchise, but it's not trying to be. Instead, this is a well-executed reaffirmation of what makes Metroid Prime distinct, and a reminder that this style of first-person adventuring still has plenty of room to grow. 8 out of 10.
Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a video game. I mean that in the most literal terms. There are hidden, floating power-ups to find, enemies with giant glowing weak spots, and a few leaps in logic that don't completely make sense. Like, why are some doors only able to be opened with rockets that Samus alone shoots from her arm cannon? Well, because it's a video game. That said, I was blown away by Metroid Prime 4's ability to define and redefine itself and the Metroidvania genre as a whole. The story for Metroid Prime 4 picks up several years after the events of Metroid Prime 3, as Psylux, known for his appearances in Metroid Prime Hunters, Metroid Prime 3, and the often maligned Metroid Prime Federation Force, that's actually pretty good if you give it a chance, attacks the Galactic Federation. Samus is separated from the group and ends up crash landing on the alien planet of Vuros, a new location for the franchise. As is the usual Metroid affair, Samus loses all of her suit's most helpful abilities as she streaks through Vuros' atmosphere. She lands, the hatch opens, she performs her signature 900 backflips as the camera circles her, and then you're off to find your stuff and stop Psylux from destroying the Galactic Federation. The introductory sequence is excellent and features some moments that felt like they might be right out of a possible Metroid Prime movie. That is, if Nintendo ever gets around to making one. In fact, Metroid Prime 4 has a newfound emphasis on its story that isn't present in any of the rest of the games in the series. It's certainly the most chatty Metroid game we've ever seen, which is kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, it's nice having a character give you a little bit of help when you're struggling to find where to go next after you've hit a dead end with a new power-up in it. But sometimes I just want to figure things out on my own. Miles McKenzie was introduced to gamers in the final batch of previews for Metroid Prime 4, and I was pretty worried that the dweebus would ruin the experience of soaking in the immaculate vibes that the Metroid Prime series is known for serving up. I didn't find him too annoying, but each person is going to have their own limit for how many times they can hear a big giant nerd scream, "Help me, Samus," in a single combat encounter. Speaking of combat, Metroid Prime 4 features some of the most diverse set of tools available for Samus to use to blast her way through all kinds of alien bugs and Silex's army. The combat feels good and fluid and not too challenging, but also introduces new challenges as the game goes that never let me feel too confident for too long. I especially like the way Nintendo revamped the rocket power-up. As far as the Metroidvania exploration goes, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a true return for the series. As I mentioned above, I was worried that Miles McKenzie would give away too much of the game's puzzle solving, but I thought the balance was good. Samus's telekinesis ability was also a little contentious when it was first shown off in trailers, since Nintendo didn't do a great job of explaining what sort of things Samus would be able to do with it outside of opening doors and moving small objects. While it's a far cry away from Link's telekinetic abilities in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, it's an essential tool for exploration that breaks the game wide open as soon as you get it. In addition to the telekinesis abilities Samus gets that completely revolutionize the way the player interfaces with the world, she also gets her hands, or maybe hand since one of them is inside her arm cannon, on the ancient Chozo motorcycle. Despite the naysayers online after the cycle was first shown off in trailers, I found the expansive desert areas between the main exploration sections to be riveting. Although there isn't much in them aside from a handful of puzzles and some new enemies to scan, the addition of the motorcycle makes Vuros feel like a huge place that has centuries of history to it. History that the game only scratches the surface of. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond might be the best game I've played this year, maybe this decade. There's a palpable energy to it that's almost impossible to describe unless you're the one with the controller in your hand. After nearly 20 years of waiting, Nintendo and Retro Studios were able to deliver an experience that I won't be forgetting until long after I've put the controller down. Yes, Mackenzie can be annoying, and there were plenty of moments where I was cursing the ancient Chozo for seemingly designing a labyrinth instead of a city, and the combat was sometimes a little too easy. However, I'm willing to look past all of those things because Metroid Prime 4 Beyond delivers on the promise that Nintendo made back in 2017, that Metroid Prime was going to continue. And continue it has. Gloriously, triumphantly, 9 out of 10. This article may contain affiliate links. This site might make commission based on purchases made using the link, however, has no affiliation with the companies discussed in this review.
9 out of 10!
Yeah.
Peter,
9 out of 10.
Why did we do this?
As we said in the intro, these are fake.
These are fake.
Fake. We have not played the game.
No.
We don't have the game. We've not played the game.
No.
I think what we are trying to do here and what we're going to discuss in this episode is the ways that a lot of writing can sometimes feel like it is completely removed from the actual existence of a game. And that you can make a lot of assumptions and statements about a game without actually having played it. And I want to say this up front, too. This is not meant to fuel the narrative that a lot of people online sometimes run with, that like, oh, game reviewers don't play the game. That's not what this is about. That's just not true. It's just not true. But what this is meant to do, and what we're going to get into here, is the way that like when we talk about games, sometimes it feels like we're reusing a lot of phrases that just apply broadly to a lot of video games and don't specifically get into the actual mechanics, the actual systems, the actual whatever of the game that's actually in front of us.
Yeah, definitely. There is almost this sense of upholding a specific way that you have to talk about games, and what a lot of shorthand means. That I think it was funny. You actually had a lot of, in your review, a lot of stuff came through that I did not include in mine. So I was surprised that I was like, oh my God, you're right. That is so. There were so many things that I hope when listening to these reviews that people were like, oh, that is familiar. This does sound like a review. This is something I've seen before. And I don't know. I've got a bunch of notes here next to me about kind of like what I was trying to do in this.
So that's the other thing too. When we sort of sat down to do this, I was texting you about it and I was like, I am struggling because like, I want to make sure that I'm like hitting on things and being clear and not just writing a bad review, but maybe like writing something as an example. And so I also have like, I took notes as to like what I was trying to accomplish by writing it this way or doing this thing. So I'd love to break both of those down with you then.
Yeah, I think so. First, the And I think we can kind of just go part by part in these
Yeah,
reviews because
let's do it.
I think your review had a different aim than mine. Mine was really focused on nostalgia. Mine was
Yeah.
really focused on the something we've talked about before, this kind of like return to form arc.
Yeah.
And I think like it's almost this really overused sequel framing that for what I was trying to achieve is poking at this idea of the game holding up a sign that says you remember this, you're familiar with this,
Mhm.
and that meaning that it's good. Like we don't question whether or not that original thing works in a contemporary timeline as much as we are like, is it that thing you remember that you've already decided is good?
Yeah.
And if there is enough there, then that means you already know. And I think there's this almost deliberate reaffirmation in my review at the very beginning of like, don't worry, real fans, the people who are reading
Yes.
this review.
Yes.
Don't worry. Like I'm one of you and I am talking to you. And there is this thing I keep coming back to that I set up in that first paragraph that is like this. Um, anyone expecting a reinvention, and it's like that's not the person we're talking to here. You know,
Right.
it's like that's this review isn't for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I may, so
please.
something I had written down as well is so like I have when I'm talking about the story, I talk about this character Silux, which by the way, I don't know that much about Metroid. I have played
Yeah, right.
some of them. I name dropped the Chozo, a word that I remember from
was good.
Metroid Dread. I have no idea. Like I have no idea if that's what is in Metroid Prime 3 or if that's even in the Metroid Prime stuff. I don't know. But I did some looking at the bad guy Silux, the antagonist, because he's I know that he was in Metroid Prime Hunters. I know, but I didn't know he was in other stuff. So I did some looking at it. And so the thing that I did in my review is I say like Silux, known for his appearances in Metroid Prime Hunters, Metroid Prime 3, and the often maligned Metroid Prime Federation Force. It's actually pretty good if you have a chance. Attacks the Galactic Federation. None of that means anything. It doesn't matter, right? Like it's just kind of lip service saying like, I know what this guy is. And I don't think it's necessary. You know what I mean? Like, I think maybe you can just say like, I don't know. To me, what I'm saying is like, I think a lot of the times a review that is being positioned as being written by someone who is a big fan of something,
Oh, sure.
doesn't actually take it a step further. This is actually something we touched on a little bit more in our bonus episode for Patreon subscribers for the Critical Error Nation, patreon.com/critical error, where like sometimes there will be like fandom creators, people who are just like big fans of stuff, and they'll like make a game review and analysis. And it'll be like an hour and a half long, and then you click on it, it's just a summary. And it's frustrating because a lot of the times the people who do have that like more like wiki knowledge, like who have a lot of like series knowledge, don't use it to actually take anything a step further. And they only use it as a way of just like, hey, I just know that Silux was in these 3 games, you know, and doesn't connect it, doesn't make any like broader connections or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I think what it most demonstrated to me is I think why we kind of did this practice, because it is something that what you wrote there, no matter what the game you played did, would not change.
Right.
That intro is canned.
Yeah.
And you haven't gotten to talking about the game yet.
Yeah.
And I think this year we've seen a lot of reviews do that. This kind of like this, I liked how you did this because I think a trend this year has been the bringing in of other games when you're reviewing a game. And I just don't know if I have really seen that deployed in a inspired way yet, personally. Yeah.
I agree, because I think there's a way to do it. I haven't seen anyone do it in a more traditional like review format. You know what I mean? I think like maybe in like longer form stuff or like on YouTube or whatever, like people definitely do that. But in the more traditional like published review from a publication, I just haven't seen much of that. I'll also say too, like my intro, like when I was talking like Metroid Prime is a video game. I wrote about, I like highlighted this and said like it's a meaningless hook. So often I feel like I read reviews where they have a hook and like I'm willing to go there with it, but then like it doesn't connect. It doesn't like land really. It's just more of
aesthetic. It's like a style.
Yeah. I also, because I initially had down also like here's a little writing tip. And I've certainly fallen victim to this. Starting a review with game is a game where you blah, blah, blah. And like
Ooh.
it's a really it's a really easy way to like get into talking about something, but it is kind of an overused sort of structure and format. And I was like, what's the most like
What was your first
condensed
sentence?
way of
What was your first sentence?
Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a video game.
Yeah, okay.
I just condensed it even further about like why even say like where you blah blah blah, which is like bring it in.
Yeah, I think we went for similar strategies here. I said Metroid Prime 4 Beyond arrives after a long 8-year wait, and the first thing it does is remind you exactly what kind of game it wants to be.
Right, which says it just says it's just a game. It's just this game. Yeah,
I think maybe every game reminds you what game it wants to be.
I think so.
I think so. I think so. So yeah. My second section was about the biomes. Okay.
Yeah. I liked this a lot. This is something I didn't really touch on.
So I have been having like a crisis lately when we talk about video game biomes, because it's something that I think has come up a lot this past year. And there was a lot of discourse in Pokemon Legends ZA around it just being placed in a city.
Yeah, there was.
And sometimes I'm like really curious about if people are literally talking about wanting an aesthetic quality, even if it is just textures, even if it is literally just everything about the game is exactly the same, but you are in a snowy area and that gives you satisfaction because it's different from the desert area. So I think what I tried to do in this section is to follow this kind of standard region by region breakdown, even though every single person playing a video game knows like what a snow level is. Like you don't need a sentence of me describing snow. Same with like the desert level and same with like the jungle. And I think game reviews often kind of pad themselves with these environmental tours, even though they're not super relevant to a kind of critical take about them.
So I did something similar where like I just listed like here are the features of the game.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And sort of like a little section about each of them. And to your point of what you're saying here is I think that a lot of game reviews tend to fall into the trap of like being descriptive rather than being like reflective at all, where they just like exactly what you said, like snow biome, desert biome, jungle. And it's like, okay, sure, that was in the trailer. Or like I saw it in the trailer. So, and it was more interesting there because I could actually see it, as opposed to just
you formed a judgment on it immediately upon seeing it. So you don't need somebody to form a kind of a passing surface level judgment on it. You need the next level because that's what you don't have.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now in this section, I also did something. Did this ever come up in yours? Did you ever bring up the 120, 60 frames?
No, when you were talking about it, I was like, oh, I forgot that people talk about this.
I was like, you have to. You have to.
Yeah, because it's Switch 2. Yep, you're right.
Version. Yeah. And it's fun. My bringing this up was literally just to say the performance mode at 120 frames is good. The quality mode at 60 frames is also good.
So I have a question for you about this.
Yeah.
So because I don't necessarily mind when that sort of stuff is brought up in a review, especially because Switch hardware is so...
We're curious about it.
Yeah. And with the Switch 2, like hearing, oh no, the game runs really well. That is actually something that I'm curious about in a review. So I don't necessarily mind when someone touches on it, even if it is something quick, because it is something that you can just get to, it is informative and you just move on, right? Like, because I think it's difficult to sort of like sometimes like talk about a negative, right? Like to prove a negative of like, oh, if the performance is good, then there's nothing to write about. You know what I mean? So like it doesn't, But I usually appreciate that. So I don't necessarily think that's something that should be like excluded from reviews, but I want to hear what you think.
I think what I want is I want somebody to inject themselves a little bit. So I think that like the performance is an objective quality. Yeah. And then you need to have a subjective stance on the objective quality, right? So just like saying the performance and how it does is step one. Step two is I would like the reviewer, just as like a blanket rule.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me which mode you liked more and why. Pick one.
So
what did you play the game on? Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I was going to say this too, because I'm not someone who like, I'm not the guy to talk about technical specs of stuff. I'm just not. Right. So do you think that I should test that out? Or like for me, so like If I'm going to write about it, should I have tested it out and talk about it? Or is it the sort of thing where, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you should literally go into the menu, click onto the other one. You will experience something.
Yeah, you'll have a perspective on it.
And then after you do that, you will either decide to stay on the one you switched to, or you will go back to the other one. And there is a reason for that. And I think whatever that is, if you're going to bring up the performance in your review, then I need that as well. I need that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, or just don't bring it up, or just don't bring it up and say that you liked the performance and you know what I mean, and it was you never felt compelled to change it.
Yeah, because I'm someone who I just don't touch it because I'm like, why would you ever listen to me about this?
Because obviously experience it for yourself and just pick the one that you like. But I think like if I think it's also a take to say you never moved off of the default mode because.
In the same way that I think it's important to find like a reviewer like whose like critical opinions you like really respect and like align yourself with. I think it's good to find someone who does the same thing for you, like mechanically, if that's something you care about. Like, for example, like I know a lot of people talk about like Digital Foundry and whatever. I think Skill Up on YouTube, I think he does a fantastic job of like breaking down specs and stuff. He usually, to my understanding, he plays most things he can on PC and he tests them on different rigs and stuff, and we'll talk about that in his reviews, which I find to be like, because it's not something I care about because it's not what I go to. Like I don't play games on PC really, but like I think he does to my understanding, he does a good job at breaking that sort of stuff down. Interesting perspective you have on writing about performance because I didn't even come up on mine because I literally just never write about it unless it's like egregiously bad.
I think I think part of my implicit reason for why I included it is because I think that Nintendo has kind of said this is something you need to talk about because it's in their advertising. So it's now, I think, part of the discussion that a lot of the times PR is able to say like, this is part of the conversation. It establishes what is on the table to be discussed. Yeah. So I do think it is a talking point, and I do think it will be a large part of reviews. But kind of going into my next section is that I think a good comparison is I bring up the mouse mode controls. And
I didn't even touch on that. I should have, but yeah.
So I did play Metroid Prime 4 at my Nintendo Switch 2 hands-on event.
Okay.
And I tried the mouse controls. And something that I think is kind of funny about these controls is that I don't think they make sense in this game at all. Like,
it's interesting because Metroid is not like it is a first person shooter in that you are in first person and shooting things, but it's not like a first person shooter where you like need quick like aiming, right? Like, is that kind of what you mean?
So I think what it comes down to me is the game using the mouse controls for the more specific aiming, I think will categorically make you worse at aiming than just using the lock-on tool that the game provides you with.
Yeah.
Because a larger degree of control means that there's a larger amount of like variance to mess up. Whereas the lock-on, I just pressed that button
just gets you there.
And I was immediately on whatever I needed to be on. And I think that for me, it has to do with who you want players to be when they are inhabiting Samus. How good should Samus be at shooting? And in my head, Samus is like top dog. Is like part of playing as Samus is that you are playing. The reason why the lock-on is there is because Samus is better than who you're typically playing as in first-person shooter games. That's why it's there. They're trying to get you to be like, no, aiming is not part of the conversation for Samus. Right. That's not, she is so good, you don't have to do that. So I almost think that the mouse controls are this thing where it's like you're reviewing something off to the side. You're like, the mouse controls are really competent in the same way that they would be competent in any other use on this system. Like we don't talk about how competent the control sticks are. We don't talk about how competent the buttons are. But like here, you're going to see reviews that talk about how good the mouse controls are, and I find that to be so like goofy almost because imagine a PC game. Imagine a PC game, and you're like, the mouse controls are really strong.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, but I would also like potentially push back on that because this is a new piece of hardware, right? And so like this is a hardware gimmick, for lack of a better term, right? And so I don't, and because this is one that Nintendo specifically, to your point about like the frame rate stuff, like Nintendo has specifically said like, and check out mouse mode on Metroid Prime 4. So I do think that there is merit to be talking about it here, especially because this is a game that, in my opinion, it makes most sense to try out mouse mode on.
Let me reframe.
What I mean?
Let me reframe.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't work because I think when people talk about how competent mouse mode is, they're not talking about how it is deployed for the sake of the video game. They're talking about how it is technically proficient.
So then I think that's what it is, right? Where it's like talk about it. You can, like, I think with all of these things in these like sort of goofy reviews, like you can talk about these things. But the way that we talk about them has to be to in actually service of the game. Because can you remind me what you wrote about the mouse controls?
I can. So the lock-on system remains the backbone of combat, and even with the optional mouse-style free aim mode, it is clear that Retro built encounters around spacing and timing rather than raw accuracy. So that was all I said about it.
Yeah, but I think that's actually a good piece of criticism.
Thank you.
So do you know what I'm saying? So like I actually think that like if that was in a review, I'd be like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think people will pick up on this because because genuinely I think the experience of playing this game, having played a little bit of it myself, is that everyone is going to try the mouse mode, notice that it's proficient, and then realize that they don't want to play the game that way. And I think everybody's going to say that it's good because it is technically sound.
Technically works, but for this game specifically.
But I don't think that it's good. I actually think that it's like wrong. And so I just wonder if anybody will go that next step. You know what I mean? Because I almost think that what the mouse mode is giving you is running counter to how the game wants you to feel. That's just my subjective take. But I think that the mouse mode is there almost as an advertisement for the Switch 2 more than it is for the game.
Yeah, 100%. In the same way that like every time they do a new hardware, there's like a game that's like kind of like this is just the
that's why
proof of concept.
At my hands-on Switch 2 event,
Metroid
Prime 4 was there, not so you could play Metroid Prime 4, but
so
you
show off this one thing. Yeah.
The other part that I thought was kind of funny about my combat section was my goal in writing it was I wanted to make the combat sound bad without saying it was bad, and then and then at the end just go, it's good.
So that's something that I kind of looked into as well, where I wrote, let's see here, format, tools, word count. I wrote 70 words out of 913 about the combat in the game. And now combat, I would not say is the focus of the Metroid Prime or of just Metroid in general, right? But it is something that is a big part of it, right? Like you are doing it a fair amount.
This game, you're going to be doing it a lot.
If I had to guess, I would agree.
Yeah.
But I also did not write much about it. I said the combat feels good and fluid and not too challenging, but also introduces new challenges as the game goes that never let me feel too confident for too long. That's nothing.
Wait. Let me hit you with mine.
Yeah.
It's a pace that may feel slow to newcomers, but series veterans will appreciate how confidently Retro sticks to its roots.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like kind of it doesn't say much at all about what this game's combat is, which and if the game is not adding anything to the conversation of combat, I think that's worth noting. But I don't think it's worth just saying like, yeah, it's like what you said, where it's kind of just fluff for the sake of fluff.
And I think that reviewers have this habit of defending like clunkiness or things that are bad because they internalize the choice as deliberate, and it being on purpose means that it's good. It's like, oh, they're trying to be this kind of game deliberately so that I get that, which makes it good. But I'm like, no. That's, if you put a different title on this game, all of a sudden you would not have intuited that deliberate choice, and you would have just said this combat is slow and bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think that what you said is that whole falls so much in line with that whole idea of the context surrounding a game matters to some people a lot in terms of like what came before it and what it is. Not that I want to necessarily dive into this, but I found this a lot with like Final Fantasy 16, which is a game that is a pretty big step away from a lot of the more traditional Final Fantasy stuff. But it was interesting that I saw a lot of people I guess just to what you're saying, where it's like, if this game was called something else, I think people would talk about this a different way. just because it just doesn't have that same legacy. Something else I mentioned here, though, too, about Metroid Prime is I wrote, I especially like the way Nintendo revamped the rocket power up. That should be Retro Studios, but whatever. Where it just says, I liked this.
Yeah.
And then just never, it doesn't go any deeper. And it's this thing that I find a lot that happens where mentioning one specific thing is not the same as expanding on it and using it as a genuine example for criticism. It was just a call out, right? It's just like, oh, this is cool. This works.
Okay. That is very similar to, in the next section, I focused on the psychic abilities.
Yeah. So me too. Yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of my like, what's new this time thing. And I do a lot of just kind of like listing things that you can do. The psychic glove allows her to pull this, route energy, yank obstacles, the visor, this, and I'm just kind of listing these things. And I discovered in my preparation of this review a phrase that I found to be quite popular. And I was like, oh, fun. And tried to deploy it here, which was additive, but not disruptive.
Oh, people wrote that in like previews and stuff?
Which I think is so like, what are we doing, dude? Additive, but not disruptive.
Additive, but yeah, it's kind of a bit of a nothing burger, huh?
I think to me what that is it's something that comes up in sequels. It's something that people are like,
oh, interesting. Yeah, where it's on top of what you knew before, but it doesn't get in the way of any of that stuff. It's just more. That's interesting. So what's interesting is I wrote about it by saying like, people were worried about this because the trailers didn't do a great job of being like, oh, like what can you actually do other than like open doors? Oh, wow. Right. And so I mentioned that, but then I also say it's a far cry from Link's telekinetic abilities.
I loved that part of this actually. When you brought that up, I was like, oh, what a great pull. I can totally see that happening in reviews. People
right, because it's like a point of comparison. Because if I had to guess, it is not as sort of free flow and whatever. No. I think it's very contextual. Yeah. But I wrote, but it's an essential tool for exploration that breaks the game wide open as soon as you get it. No further elaboration. Right. And so sometimes this sort of thing happens. I found with a lot of reviews where someone will write something like this that is saying like, oh my gosh, this changes everything.
Yep.
And I don't think you need to explain entirely. I don't think you need to do a full breakdown of everything it changes, right? But I do think it is important to qualify that and discuss like in what way and how and like is that good and what does it add, as opposed to just saying yeah it changes everything.
So my take on this was that I think reviews for sequels have a tendency to present what I would say are incremental add-ons as deeply meaningful when they are actually just kind of like a slight tweak of what the game originally was. I feel like I see this all the time. And it's funny, like in the trailers, we see those psychic abilities, and the psychic abilities are just things you've been able to do before presented differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is nothing. I mean, I even wonder if psychic is the right word.
I had telekinetic, but
but I believe they use psychic in the trailer.
Oh, is that in the
I believe so. And it's funny because the psychic glove is a thing. So
you mentioned that, and I was curious if that sounded specific. Yeah.
And because I just keep coming back to that missile that they shoot, and it's like you control the missile with your psychic powers.
Yeah.
And to me, that is insane because we have had like remote controlled missiles that you guide in a million games.
It's in Skyward Sword.
I think a lot about Batman Arkham, the remote control.
Oh yeah, with the batarang.
Yeah. And it's just funny to be like, no, this one is psychic. And then
right, because it's just an aesthetic thing, right? And all that.
And so do you feel I'm sorry, do you feel that the even the existence of something called a psychic glove is a little bit of a contradiction in and
because psychic is in your brain and not like an item?
I really don't like that. It's really causing me a lot of distress, the psychic glove. I
really do wonder how that is going to be talked about. And I hope it's talked about in a way that is deeper than what we have here. Sure. Right? About just like so often games when they're from long running sequels or series or whatever, and then that new thing is added, it's just a surface level thing, right? Because you're right. I mean, and this is the criticism we've seen. I sort of address it in the thing where it's like, yeah, she just like open doors, guide some missiles, just pull some platforms out, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't really like. It's not that different. Like, it's really not that different. and if it wasn't an upgrade and you just shot a button that opened the thing, would we even be writing about it? And the answer is probably not.
Right.
So I'll be curious to see how people talk about that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the motorcycle?
Oh my God. Yeah, please. I would love to.
I liked what you wrote about it. I think we wrote kind of similar things about like that, there's these like discrete, like main sort of like temple locations or whatever you want to call them, like exploration sections that are pieced together by these desert motorcycle sections. And I think you wrote like, although it is a bit boring, right? You wrote something about that.
Yeah.
I also wrote something like that. And this is just like based on what I saw in trailers where I'm like, there isn't much in these like desert sections, but aside from like bugs to shoot and like some things to scan. But that does add to the overall like vibe of this planet and whatever.
This was the section where I made the most stuff up. I really had no idea I like looked over the trailers and I was like, man, I said this to you before recording. I genuinely have no idea what their plan is for this motorcycle. Yeah. So in my review, I like kind of made up a couple of things that you do with it just as a guess. But then I also took a little bit of a swing here and I said, I bet you they use that motorcycle in the finale in a big way that will leave everybody feeling like it was really cool and purposeful. And I think that's why it's there. I think that there's a big boss fight. I think that's why it's there.
Can I be cynical for just a moment?
Please.
This is me stepping away from the idea of these reviews. I think the reason this motorcycle is there is so Samus can do an Akira slide in all the trailers. I think someone did Samus doing the Akira slide and went, fuck, that's cool. And then they were like, well, we got to put a motorcycle in here, huh?
We will see.
We will see. I mean, she does it. It's in the trailers.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess we'll see if it turns into anything more. Yeah, it's funny. I think I was like into this idea of it just kind of standing in as a loading screen in some ways. And I was like, oh, okay. Nintendo Retro had this like, they wanted to put something in between these dungeons and they were like, okay, we have to do something. Let's at least make it fun and interesting. And then kind of what emerges is not that special because at the end of the day, it is a stand-in for a loading screen, but maybe to them, it at least adds to the feeling of... You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question for you about like writing criticism, because this is sort of where I fall with that. In my mind, I was like, okay, these sections are bad, and so I'm going to write about them being bad, but I'm not going to say that they're bad. I'm just going to say that like there isn't much in them aside from these things, but it does also make it feel like it's a big cohesive world.
Yeah.
And so I actually don't necessarily think that's the wrong thing to write if you are unbothered by these sections.
Yeah.
Right. So like for me, in my mind, if I play this game and these sections are exactly what I'm expecting them to be, like, I don't think they'll bother me. I think they will just be another thing in between the things that I want to actually be doing.
Yeah, it's low impact.
Yeah, right. Low impact is and so like I don't think it's necessarily wrong to not say like these are bad. Would you agree?
No, yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's one of those things where it's like maybe when you play the game does not emphasize them as much as like the trailers have.
Yeah.
And it ends up just being this, I just spent hours in a dungeon. And then you have this little like reprieve where you're on this
and I'm driving around.
Yeah, maybe the way it functions in the game is not for you to like really get up close and personal with it and really think about what it's doing, because what it's doing is just like giving you a second to not be so focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't necessarily think it's wrong then to say this sort of thing, as long as it is, in my opinion, quick.
Yeah,
right. Because if it's low impact for you, then it should be low impact in the review as well.
I agree, and I think that's something that I was very purposefully doing in this review is that I kind of siloed all of my review into sections as if these things are not related to each other.
Yeah.
And like, I think if you look at the motorcycle section as not how it kind of fits into the whole experience and as its own thing, there's kind of like a little bit of a mistake at play even there.
So I actually, this is something that I did as well. And sometimes this is difficult, right? And I'm certainly guilty of doing this sort of thing.
So guilty. Yeah,
because it's difficult.
I will continue to be guilty of it.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to not just say like, speaking of the combat, speaking of the exploration, where you just take these like hard pivots. This is something that I think is actually very, very difficult to get right. And like I said, it's not something I do perfectly all the time.
Nope.
but what I think is a really, really well written review is able to have these things flow into each other a little bit more, as opposed to just like taking hard pivots of like, now we're talking about the combat, now we're talking about the story, now we're talking about this. But I do see a lot of reviews do those hard pivots and in places where I'm like, I think you could have melded this together a little bit stronger. And in a game like this, like Metroid Prime 4, I assume, but if, like the rest of the series is anything to go for, these elements are actually all really, really intertwined with each other. The combat and this exploration and the world and, you know what I mean? Like all of these things are usually like pretty close together, which it makes it much, much easier to not have to just say like, cool. In Uncharted, you're running around and you're doing all these cutscenes, and then you pick up a gun, and now it's stealth, and it's like those are like disconnected, right? Whereas like in Metroid, like a lot of that is like sort of synthesized well.
It's funny. Speaking of that, I think you and I both went into these reviews with the take that this is a more story-focused game.
Jake, I wrote about story for 3 paragraphs. More than 1/3 of my review is story.
Yeah, I think we both got that read for some reason, and I think like. The thing that I was trying to kind of put on the table for this discussion is that I wanted to present the story as and how we talk about it as this like prestigification. The cinematic presentation is automatically seen as a more sophisticated level of storytelling, even though maybe the storytelling in those less cinematic Metroid Prime games was really effective and really powerful.
And that's what I think people like about them, right? That you're scanning all of the enemies and you're scanning all these artifacts and stuff like that, and like learning about this world through ambiance and through actually like inhabiting the world, as opposed to being told about the world. I too touched on this by saying it feels like it's right out of a possible Metroid Prime movie.
I also said movie.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say it, because it's this thing where like I think that for a lot of people, the idea that a video game is like a movie is the highest compliment it can be given. And yeah, what you're saying is prestigious, right? And it's like, oh no, like now it's valid, and now my fandom is like, yeah, it's like there's validity to it, and it's like it doesn't need it, because Metroid Prime. What people like about Metroid Prime, at least one, I know one of the members of the nation, Abram, made a video sort of breaking down the Metroid Prime 4 trailer and talking about how it's actually not more like Metroid Prime 1, the one that people are most familiar with, but it's more like these other ones in the series, that I thought was kind of interesting. But like, to my understanding, the thing that people really like about the Metroid Prime games is the way that they are not a movie, and these more games that are more interested in like vibe and ambiance.
I almost feel like if you approach from that angle of this is a more story-focused Metroid game, I almost wonder if that immediately, I'm like, so are you saying that past Metroid games were not? You see what I'm saying? It's like, I think you're trying to say something else.
Well, I mean, it's that thing about like, well, like, oh, it's cinematic in the way that they aren't. That said, what's that? There was one that people really didn't like. Metroid the Other End. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
But I think what that actually is a part of me wishes that this is how it was contextualized in reviews, is a more conservative approach to storytelling than the franchise has participated in the past.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what if we just take the language of cinema and we try our hand at it? Whereas I think what is cool about Metroid Prime is that it takes the language of games. Yeah, and tells an interesting story using that, and not one that is like plot heavy, but is like world heavy, right? And told through that sort of stuff. Can I just say, I thought it was silly that I wrote she performs her signature 900 backflips. See what I'm talking about when she exits the ship?
Yeah, of course.
I just think it's funny that is her signature, isn't it? 900 backflips on the row.
I really regret not having a single mention of the morph ball.
I did in my original one, and I changed it.
Yeah, me too, I think.
Yeah, there's probably something about the morph ball segments that, whatever.
You gave it
something you have to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, okay, wait. The last thing I wanted to make sure to mention was I had a paragraph at the end that was literally just about how cool the third act was, how cool the finale was.
Yeah.
And which is a trend I've kind of noticed, particularly with Nintendo games in the past couple of years. And I feel that these sections always read the same. In my notes, I wrote down, Third act paragraph, no spoilers, but oh my gosh.
But trust me, yeah,
I won't
it's such a
spoil it.
thing.
I won't spoil it,
Yeah,
but it's big. And I think it's like man, okay, I think what's coloring my interpretation of this too is that every single time I've gotten to the finales of these games that reviews have promised me are big and awesome and cool, I have had the same reaction every single time where I go, "Oh, it was just the loudest moment." It wasn't
yeah.
yeah, you know, it was just a kind of the end of a Marvel movie where it's like, "All right, time to scream and beam." And yeah.
Or it'll be stuff where it's just like, oh well, I guess it just looked at the camera and said like, you're a fan of Donkey Kong, right? You know,
Can we speak
like,
plainly? Can we speak plainly?
You're always welcome to.
All right. So I'm of course thinking of the Donkey Kong Bonanza finale, which
Spoilers,
to me,
I guess.
spoilers, I guess. Which I'm not even going to say anything specific, but
Okay.
to me, I think lacked an escalation in what that game was maybe most interested in, and instead invested in an escalation in a kind of like imagined fan way, like a meta way. So
Yeah.
when I think about the finale to Super Mario Odyssey, I think about being Bowser, and I'm like, yes, that is the correct escalation. Yes, that is what we should be doing at the end of this game. And I don't think Bonanza did the same thing, and I felt the same way about. I feel like the way that people talk about the ending, spoilers, for The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom with the dragon sequence.
You didn't like that?
No, I thought it was goofy. I because to me, like the quote unquote story and the experience of playing these modern Zelda games is not the most important thing, is not the plot. And I think people talked about the ending of that game in a way that like, oh, this as a plot is like really cool and satisfying. But for
Yeah.
the issue with it is that the dragon and everything surrounding that moment is just as cool in a vacuum, completely devoid of every other part of the video game around it, completely out of context. It is just as cool out of context as it is in. Nothing in the game really like built up to that moment in a way that I was like, oh, this is a catharsis of what this game is about and interested in, what they've been training me to do. This is me like crescendoing.
I see.
Instead, it's cool for the exact reasons that you would have thought it was cool at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, I would maybe need to have this conversation closer to having played it because I don't remember the specifics of it.
Yeah,
I did like the way that like I'm forgetting what were the like little things that they got called.
The little things that they got, the tiers, the little the stones, the special stones, the something.
I don't remember
stones,
what they were
the
about.
The sacred stones.
Yeah, certainly. I'm sure they were sacred of some kind. But when Ganon gets his hands on one eventually, after you beat him in a sword fight,
secret stones.
The secret stones.
Were called. They were called the secret stones.
And then he plops that motherfucker in his mouth.
Yeah.
And then he becomes the dragon. And I thought that was cool. And I thought it was an interesting, like, in the way that Zelda is also the dragon. It's like, oh, here we go. Everyone's dragons now.
To me, there was a logic to it that was, I describe this sometimes as Mad Lib's storytelling. It's like you could have done anything and they just chose dragon. Like there wasn't a narrative
it wasn't
inevitability.
Like I know what you mean.
Yeah. And I wanted to build in a way where I go, oh my God, I never saw that coming, but it was right in front of my face the whole time.
Yeah. Right, because it's what you're saying, and it's not that it's bad to do it in that way necessarily, but it is stronger to have had it all lead to one thing.
Yeah, and especially since like the game has all of these cool powers in it. Where it's like,
you're right.
You're building stuff, you're lifting stuff, you're going through and then it's like dragon. It's like I'm like no, that's not what's cool about this. Actually, that's not what's cool about this.
Because I think, not to make this about just Tears of the Kingdom, but I think that section that a lot of people didn't like, I actually did like, where you're on the big mech suit and you're like you're getting in a boss fight and you have to like attach things to its like arms. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. No, that's like one of the best parts.
And I thought it was cool because that is an escalation of what the things you've been doing.
In. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, but with Metroid Prime 4,
our fake Metroid Prime 4 reviews.
Correct. Yeah. One of the things that I did is I wrote about it for 3 paragraphs. It's over 300 words of a 900 word review. Because people tend to like, even if this game does have a heavier emphasis on its story, I still think that at its core, this game will have will be Metroid Prime, where it is mostly focused on exploring these environments and whatever, right? I could be wrong, but that's the bet I'm making here. And so if that is the case, I think it is a mistake then to spend so much time and emphasis on the story when that's not what the game actually is. Mm-hmm. That can be interesting, but if you are going to hit on it with that much time and whatever, you need to give other things that are also the main crux of the game even more time and exploration then, I think. You know what I mean?
I do. So I'm wondering, so having gone through this entire practice, what do you think is going to be kind of the narrative surrounding this game, the takeaway surrounding this game? You know, we are all, I feel like almost every time a Nintendo game comes out, there's this like grand sweeping statement made about either the state of Nintendo or the state of the franchise. It's like, so what is going to be the narrative surrounding Metroid Prime as a franchise after Metroid Prime 4 Beyond releases?
I think it'll be like, hey, I can't believe it's been 20 years. These are great. They should be making these all the time.
I feel that there's such a alignment between Metroid Prime 4 and Hollow Knight Silksong in a way.
Oh, sure.
And I almost think that there's like this like build of wanting to play this game and like waiting for it and the anticipation for it. But Hollow Knight Silksong, like I think Metroid Prime 4, is this game that once you start playing it, it's not like this bombastic, oh my God, we're in it. It like is a little bit of a slow burn.
Understated.
Yeah. So both times now with Silksong and with Metroid Prime 4, I have been kind of being like, what is the narrative that's going to emerge? And Silksong, I think the narrative that emerged was kind of boring. It was, I think, largely difficulty discourse.
I couldn't believe that that's what we were back to.
I know.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
And then, so I've kind of been thinking about this one. And I'm like, oh, I think the discourse is going to be less interesting than I think. And I think that the discourse is going to be two things. One, oh boy, are they getting ready to make a Metroid Prime movie.
Sure. Two,
this is not the Metroid Prime game that everybody wants, but the next one will be. This is laying the foundation. A thing I don't know what people mean when they say, but this is laying the foundation for the future of the franchise. I think that is going to be what people say at the end of a lot of their reviews. This one's not perfect, but the next one probably will be.
Because you know what's so interesting about saying that, though, is like you could say that about Breath of the Wild, but you wouldn't, because that game has enough going on for it to be able to be like, no, there is so much here to dissect, right?
How funny. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a game that redefined its series and definitely did lay the foundation of what's to come for Zelda, of course. But like, I don't think you would say that, because you would talk about the game instead,
right?
You know, instead of sort of like writing fan fiction about what you think comes next. I will say one thing that I did write in my sort of closing bit here was about saying like, it's perfect, it's amazing, and then here are these annoyances with these other elements of the game that I didn't like. I talked about each of those elements, but I did not talk about the annoyances or like the problems I had with them until right now, the very last second, and they're completely removed from context. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like reviews do that a lot, where like at the end they'll be like, you know, it's not perfect, you know, it has this, it has this, it has this, but ultimately it's really, really good. But those like individual things are like things you should have brought up in the review, I think, you know?
Yeah, mine took a little bit of a different approach, where I was just kind of like, okay, end paragraph, time to restate everything I just said in kind of like a bullet form way. Yeah. And I gave it the 8 out of 10. You gave it a 9 out of 10. Yeah. Mine was, I think, more the kind of, I don't know, like less bold, I think is what I was looking for. Just something that's like, it's good, but not great. And I think what I wanted at the end was really to just kind of hit that refrain of, but I'm giving you the sense that if you're a classic Metroid Prime fan, you will like this a lot more than this 8 out of 10 score represents. Yeah. I don't see this game getting a lot of 9s, if I'm being honest. I can't. It's hard for me to see.
Oh, I don't know. It comes from such a storied series that people are just rabid for. And it's got the story, right, of like, oh man, this game was announced in 2017, and here we are 8 years later, right? Almost 20 years after Metroid Prime 3 came out, which is crazy.
I know. There's just something about it. There's something about it that I'm like, I think that there are going to be enough standout chinks in the armor, enough moments in the game, enough features that are like, I know reviews don't work this way score wise, but this kind of thing that's like it is going to appear as a negative on the negative column.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there will be enough of those that I just don't see it getting the coveted 9.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
We'll see. I have no idea when
We'll
reviews
see.
for this drop. We have not played this. Well, you played it preview at that preview, but
Sure, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was instrumental to you making this review, Jake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, Nintendo, of course.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the code.
Thank you, Nintendo. Thank you for this.
Do you like my thing about affiliate links? I thought that was funny.
That was awesome. I was like, damn, I wish I did that. No, it was
funny.
good. It was good.
Thank you.
Wait, so Peter, how does this whole show who do we really have to thank at the end of the day for allowing us to spend far too long writing reviews for games we have not played?
Why, Jake, it's easy.
Yeah.
We have the Critical Error Nation to thank.
It's their fault.
It is their fault for encouraging us. This, by the way, this episode was something that when we sat down to make this podcast, Jake was like, I've always wanted to do something like this. And I was like, we should absolutely do that. I think it would be kind of a fun like exercise and interesting like look into review writing and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you to the Critical Error Nation, our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/critical error. If you want to join them, you certainly can. There's all sorts of bonus content. Every single week we do lengthy bonus episode today. Like I said, we were talking a little bit about the idea of like fandom creators sometimes just don't take that extra step into being something that is like really, really like excellent. Even though what they're making is already pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of feeling talk, which I like.
Oh my God. A lot of feeling talk. We
just talking about like video games and feelings.
Video games and feelings. Oh God. Got some stuff off my chest today on the bonus episode.
Me too. It feels good. It feels good when we do them. But I would like to give a special shout out to the people who are a part of the Jake and Peter tier. That is Evan Ponce and Ansel Trait. These people are supporting us in the most monetary sense. And we really appreciate them. They are keeping the lights on with us. In addition, Jake.
Yeah.
Every week. You compare a sound.
Hell yeah.
Last week you called me out in the sound, being like, Peter doesn't listen to these. I listen every week. I listen to them every single week.
We got caught. I don't know for sure that somebody didn't tell you though. So
they did not.
All right.
They did not. So. I don't have anyone on the inside.
All right, let's see what the sound is this week. Thank you all. Samus. Look, I found an entire family of Chozo. Let me introduce you to them. We've got Evan Ponce and Ansel Trait in the front. Connor Truelove's right there next to Andrew Bolkar, Danny Disaster, Sam Cedar, and James Pierre Reed. And then if you look at that back row, that's Jacob Richter, Jared Cousineau, and Sam Woods. And then there's, oh no, where is Cole? Guys, where is Cole? Where is the Chozo Cole?
Yeah, so thank you very much to the Critical Error royalty. That said, we usually end by doing a written piece for the show, but because we both did, so this is kind of a writing heavy episode from both of us. So we kind of said like, hey, let's maybe skip it this time. And instead, Jake, I have a question for you that I just want to ask. I think it's kind of a fun, like getting to know you question a little bit that I think is kind of relevant. I know you have something similar for me, but if I may,
yes.
Can you, Jake, what makes the character of SpongeBob SquarePants so appealing to you specifically?
Oh, who lives in a pineapple? Okay, let's talk. SpongeBob SquarePants is I love SpongeBob.
I know you love him. I just want to know like what about him and what about SpongeBob coded characters? Claptrap, for example. What is it that you like that speaks to you so much about this kind of character?
Okay, I think at the heart of it, there is this quality of what are they gonna say? What are they gonna say?
Yeah.
And it's to me like SpongeBob is one of the greatest comedians of all time.
Interesting.
Yes, I see SpongeBob as a comedian, and I am like at the edge of my seat, dying to know how he is going to respond to every situation, because SpongeBob is a character that can manifest a punchline whenever he wants.
Yeah.
There is something about his position in the world that is like so fascinating to me, where you never know when it's going to be like a non sequitur or just like a particular response to a question that just like Oh man, it's like breaking a script almost. And it's
Yeah.
crazy because SpongeBob is such like an old cartoon character that you'd think we would almost have this sense of his script, but there's almost a like for the Office fans, like a Michael Scott quality in SpongeBob, I think.
Oh,
That
sure,
is,
sure.
there's something similar at play there. That just like gives way to these moments that are so like instantly iconic and memorable. I don't think it is a coincidence that both like Michael Scott and SpongeBob are extremely prevalent in GIFs. I
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's something about that, but I also think SpongeBob, if I could get like a little philosophical, is
Sure.
is like a non-toxic male,
Yeah.
working class,
Yeah.
and happy.
Yeah.
Mm. And
Oh, how aspirational, huh?
SpongeBob like loves his job.
And he like wants to be there every day.
Oh god, I'm getting like emotional even
Yeah,
thinking about
yeah.
this. I'm actually getting emotional. And like SpongeBob like loves his friends.
SpongeBob above all else loves his friends,
And
and
yeah.
and he loves people for who they are, which I like. Like his relationship with Squidward, I quite like, because Squidward doesn't like SpongeBob, or like
Yeah.
like pretends to not like SpongeBob a
Yeah.
lot. It like kind of postures as that way. But the thing about it is that SpongeBob kind of, it's not that he doesn't know that, but I think he knows that Squidward is just kind of a grump, and he likes him anyway.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%. He's like, oh, classic Squidward.
Yeah, no, Squidward's out here, being a naysayer.
I think SpongeBob has a relationship with Gary the snail that reminds me of my relationship with Chip the dog.
No, for sure. Can I say this? I think Critical Error has a shocking amount of a shocking lack rather of Chip content.
Yeah, you're right. Got it. How do
Yeah.
we get Chip involved?
Dude, we got to get Chip on the pod.
I think bonus episode next week, big Chip episode.
Big. Okay. Look forward to that.
Okay.
Criticalerror.com or patreon.com/criticalerror.
But yeah, I don't know. There's just like a lot about SpongeBob that I think like really is like really I'm gonna use the word safe, and not like safe as in like not taking any risks, but just like a presence that I'm
Mhm.
like, this is just not toxic in like a really meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's there's a lot. SpongeBob just like brings me a lot of joy. Anytime I'm in the car with Sarah and we're parallel parking and one of us starts going, "You're good. You're good."
Good.
I'm just
You're
like,
good.
"Damn,
Yeah.
dude." It's just
That's
I don't
good.
know. There's a presence there that I find to be really nice. Yeah, I don't know. Is this helping? Is this
Yeah,
helping you?
100%. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I don't even really know. I don't even know how much better I could answer this question. SpongeBob like really comforts me.
No, I love that. I love that so much.
Oh, God. Okay. My question for you
Yes, please.
was, I wanted to know if there was. I want to know. I want you to tell me about an experience you had this year in which you had a reaction that surprised yourself. Oh, that's not the reaction I thought I was going to have. Oh, I learned a little something.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't think I was going to like this, but I do. But I think, something, I'm looking for something where you were like, oh man, I've had a lot of, played a lot of games this year that are like sequels to games that I was looking forward to that kind of like let me down. And I was trying to think, I was like, what happened to me this year that made me go, oh, I think I actually am not who I thought I was, or maybe I am a little different than what I thought. And it doesn't have to be with a game. It could be like with your music. It could be with hearing somebody talk about like a video you made. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
what comes to mind?
So what I find difficult about this question is I am largely an open-minded person.
Yeah.
I'm I would say non-judgmental almost to a fault. In that I'm willing to just like let it, I want to try it. I want to try it, and I'm open to it. So can you repeat exactly how you phrased it again?
Yeah, I just want to know if there was a moment this year where you surprised yourself, where you had a reaction to something that, like, if I would have asked you how you were going to react to that, or maybe something just came out of you and you were like, oh, that's maybe not who I thought I was.
I think, yeah, okay. So I went to the Philippines in February for 2 weeks, which was very cool. And it was largely a great experience. And what that did for me was there was a confirmation of I used to be a pretty adventurous kind of guy. And then the pandemic kind of hit and I settled into a lot of like normal routine and stuff like that. And that made me maybe ask myself like, oh, maybe I'm not adventure man. Do you know what I mean? Maybe like I'm actually not like about this life anymore. And like, I'm sort of over it. But going to the Philippines was really surprising because I discovered that no, I'm still that person. And I still actually love this sort of thing. And I'm like trying to figure out like ways to sort of like express that and like do that again. Not just necessarily going to the Philippines, but like I think about, there were two specific things that sort of surprised me. The first thing is we were walking through this market and they were selling, it was like a fish market, whatever. And there was a guy who had just caught like a giant octopus. And they were about to chop it up and whatever. And the people I was with were like, oh my gosh, Peter, do you want a picture with the octopus? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And I go to sort of like pose next to the octopus. And they're like, no. Do you want to like hold it in your hands? And I was like, that's quite all right. That's okay. And the guy, I don't really know what octopus are like. I don't know the different body parts of the octopus, but he kind of like scoops it by its like head piece. And he's got his hand inside of it. And he's like, you just put your hand inside this. And I'm like, that's all right, I'm okay. But then I had this moment where I was like, I guess I'm never going to have the opportunity to put my hand in, or I guess I don't know when, if I ever will have the opportunity to put my hand inside the head of an octopus again. So I just did that. And there's a picture of me on the beach. I'm holding this octopus. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like one of those things where I was like, oh, I think this is going to be gross. I think this is going to be weird. I think this is going to be bad. But like I touch it and I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. This is actually quite normal. And the fact that everyone else here is like, oh, this is like pretty normal thing. It isn't like, oh, gross, whatever. Like, oh, this is pretty cool. And a similar experience to eating balut, which if you're not familiar with, it's kind of gross conceptually. It's basically like a chicken embryo. It's like it's a duck embryo, and you just eat it inside the egg. And it's one of those things that people like put on lists of like the top 10 nastiest foods in the whole world. And I'm like, I was expecting to really, really not like it. And I had two of them. And I would say they were pretty good despite what I would call the marketing. And by that, I mean, what it looks like is pretty foul, but like what it ended up tasting like, I was pretty surprised that I was like, oh yeah, you know what? Honestly, like I'm not going to have another one of these, but like if I came back to the Philippines, I would try again. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I think what you got was a little shot of energy that was like, oh, this could motivate me to maybe do some things that I otherwise would have just kind of sat in my comfort.
Yeah, I think it's about like, say yes, just say yes. Remember that you should just say yes. Because even if you don't like something, at least you did it. And I think that's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a good answer or not, but that's sort of where I'm coming from for it.
I think so. To me, you were giving a response that reminded me of like hanging out with an old friend that you haven't seen in years. And you're like, are we still
cool? And then you're like, oh yeah, we are.
Like I kind of changed a lot. You probably changed a lot. And then you hang out and you're like, oh no, this is good actually.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hey, Philippines, wonderful place to visit. Lovely place to visit.
Cool.
All sorts of great food. Also sorts of great people. It's great.
Anything else for the viewers that made it to the end of the pod?
If you like us talking about our lives and our feelings, patreon.com/criticalerror. Join the nation.
Do you think this Metroid fake review experiment went well?
I do. I hope no one's mad at us. I don't think anyone's like it's one of those things where sometimes we make videos and I'm like, oh, everyone's mad. Not mad, but like that's like too strong a word. But like people are like irked by this. I'm like, oh, I thought it was like we were trying to be thoughtful. Actually,
yeah. Now that I'm starting to reflect on it, and I think what this really allowed us to do was kind of like push in on a review without really like first name last naming anybody.
Yeah. Because I think when we have done that, in my opinion, I think we've been respectful.
I think so too.
I think about that like when we talked about like in the negative, like we've talked about that Hyrule Warriors review. Yeah. And even though I think we were being negative, I do feel that we were being thoughtful and kind and not saying, it didn't feel like a dunk.
No.
And so I agree with you where like this way we get to look at these things and like discuss the common pitfalls that a lot of reviews fall into and also showcase like sometimes people write stuff and the review, like the game, it hardly matters that they even played the game, not that they didn't, because of course people do, but sometimes it doesn't actually provide that much for what they're actually trying to get at.
Do you think anybody is listening to this podcast
No.
and looking over looking over their Metroid Prime 4 review in a panic because they in fact wrote down a prime cut of classic Metroid flavor.
No, I think they're going in the CMS. Everyone's off on Thanksgiving break or whatever.
Right.
And they're saying, no, I actually have to change it. I can't write Bed Bath, Arm Cannon, and Beyond.
That was good. I'm sorry I forgot. That made me giggle. That was God damn, dude.
And what I like too, little behind the scenes, neither of us had read any of this to each other, but
No.
that subtitle was like I wrote that like right when we started and was like, no, I'm not telling you anything. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for
being
watching.
here.
We will see you next week.
Happy holidays.